The sun dipped behind the serene Kinnekulle hills, casting an ethereal glow over the quaint village of Bloomberg, a place where the air carried whispers of ancient tales and the gentle rustle of leaves. It was the kind of evening that lulled you into a false sense of security, where the world seemed perfectly balanced between reality and dreams. But for the home family, that fragile balance was about to shatter. 20 minutes past 6, Lisa's last text promised a swift return home, her words like a steady heartbeat. Yet, as the clock ticked into infinity, an unsettling chill descended, turning the picturesque landscape into a theater of growing dread. Her moped, an emblem of newfound independence, stood abandoned, whispering secrets to the wind. The keys dangled ominously, and the silence screamed louder than any alarm. What had begun as an ordinary evening was sliding into a nightmare, casting shadows that would haunt the heart of Bloomberg forever. The sun had set behind the picturesque Kinnekulle hills, the gentle twilight casting a serene veil over the quaint village of Bloomberg. The air was filled with the soft fragrance of blooming wildflowers, mingling with the distant, earthy aroma of fresh-cut hay. It was the kind of evening when the world seemed to breathe a sigh of contentment, a pocket of tranquility that lulled the heart into a sense of safety. Yet beneath this serene facade lay an unfathomable undercurrent of dread, threatening to unravel the peace of this idyllic countryside. 17-year-old Lisa Holm felt the cool breeze brush against her skin as she stepped out of the cozy little cafe where she had been working that summer. It was a place where laughter mingled with a rich scent of freshly brewed coffee, nestled quietly near the foot of the Kinnekulle Hill. Lisa was a responsible and bright young woman, mature beyond her years, and her parents trusted her implicitly. She had only recently begun making her own way home on the moped, a gift from her parents, a symbol of her growing independence. As she texted her father at precisely 6:23 p.m., promising her imminent return, the evening sky was painted with hues of orange and pink, a watercolor masterpiece fading into the deepening blue of night. The countryside around Bloomberg was peaceful, the roads winding gently between lush forests and sprawling fields. The path home was familiar, one she could navigate with her eyes closed, the twists and turns ingrained in her memory from countless journeys. But this evening, an unsettling aura clung to the air, something unspoken yet palpable. As Lisa revved the engine of her moped, a shiver chased down her spine, perhaps an echo of the foreboding that lay ahead. The village soon slipped away behind her, the rhythmic hum of the engine the only sound in the encroaching silence. When the hours ticked by and Lisa still hadn't arrived home, an invisible thread of anxiety began to weave its way through the fabric of her family's consciousness. By 8 p.m., worry had morphed into panic, and Lisa's father set out in his car along the darkening roads, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his chest. His headlights cut through the night, searching, pleading for a glimpse of his daughter. The cafe, when he reached it, stood silent and unyielding, its doors closed and windows dark. Yet there, standing like a ghostly sentinel, was Lisa's moped, parked neatly where she had left it. The keys hung from the ignition, swaying slightly in the night breeze, a silent testament to her sudden disappearance. Her bag lay untouched beside the moped, and ominously, her helmet was missing. The realization hit like a physical blow, leaving her father breathless, his mind racing to fathom the impossible. He called out her name, his voice a fragile thread of sound that shattered against the silent walls of the cafe. But the only response was the rustle of leaves and the creaking of ancient trees, nature's indifferent chorus to his growing despair. Desperate, he dialed the police at 9:47 p.m., his voice laced with a fear that threatened to choke him. Within hours, Bloomberg was transformed. The quiet village, usually tucked under a blanket of stars, was alive with activity. A search operation of unprecedented scale was underway, drawing hundreds of volunteers who swept through fields with flashlights, their beams darting like fireflies in the night. The air was thick with urgency, a tense anticipation that hummed just beneath the surface. Yet with each passing hour, hope wavered. The initial search turned up nothing, a clean slate, devoid of clues, bereft of answers. The landscape, so familiar and safe, had swallowed Lisa whole, leaving behind only questions echoing in the empty night. Then, as dawn began to streak the sky with tentative fingers of light, the first ominous clue emerged. Inside a decrepit barn, the scent of decay hung heavy, mingling with dust and the musty odor of forgotten things. And there, amidst the neglect and ruin, lay a single black glove, a silent witness to the dark secrets that the night had concealed. The morning sun cast its golden glow over Bloomberg, painting elongated shadows that seemed to stretch forever. The village, still reeling from the shock of Lisa's disappearance, stirred with a kind of uneasy energy. The air was dense, carrying whispers of dread that lingered like a palpable mist. As the town struggled to return to a semblance of normalcy, its heart remained fractured, divided not by the streets, but by the invisible lines etched in worry and fear. The evidence trail, a breadcrumb path of scattered items, only deepened the mystery. Each discovery was a sharp intake of breath, a whisper of hope that quickly melded back into the cacophony of confusion. Lisa's pink phone case, with its familiar feel and vibrant color, lay discarded, an out-of-place artifact in the dull earth. The cracked mobile phone, once a lifeline now rendered silent, became a haunting symbol of a life interrupted. These fragments of Lisa's life, strewn across the landscape, were more than just clues. They were echoes of her presence. The torn receipt and train ticket, remnants of routine and dreams, fluttered like trapped butterflies in the wind. The sense of her, vibrant and full of potential, was a ghostly presence lingering in the air. It enveloped those who searched, guiding them with a gentle push and an unsettling tug at their hearts. As the search expanded, a heavy quiet settled over Myotorp Farm, its age and neglect speaking volumes about forgotten times. The very air around it seemed to carry an ancient, almost mournful, sigh. Weatherwood creaked under the weight of secrets untold, and the fields whispered stories with every gust of wind. It was there, amidst the farm's eerie tranquility, that the volunteers felt a deep unease take root. When the two migrants approached, their words were sharp, edged with a defensiveness that made the hair on the back of the volunteers' necks stand on end. The man's eyes, darting and wild, betrayed a storm of emotions beneath his calm facade. His insistence, his plea for the volunteers to abandon their search, was laden with a desperation that was impossible to ignore. His voice was a low growl, a warning cloaked in thin politeness, his every gesture punctuated with a nervous urgency. The woman beside him was quieter, her gaze cast downward, but even in her silence, there was a heaviness, a shared burden that seemed to weigh her down. The volunteers exchanged glances, silently agreeing that something was undeniably wrong. Beneath their feet, the earth seemed to vibrate with secrets waiting to be unearthed. The farm's inhabitants watched with tight-lipped anxiety as the volunteers continued their search. Every rustle of grass, every crack of a twig, was amplified in the stillness, echoing like thunder in the silence. The standoff was tense, a silent battle of will and suspicion. The volunteers' resolve hardened, their instincts screaming that they were close, so achingly close to the truth. When the police arrived, it was as if the very air shifted, charged with a new intensity. The officers, grim and focused, moved with a purpose born of urgency and determination. The farm, once a silent observer, now became the epicenter of a renewed investigation. The volunteers stepped back, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they might uncover. As the search intensified, the atmosphere grew thick with anticipation. The farm's shadows lengthened, curling around the edges of the fields like dark fingers reaching for hidden truths. And just beneath the surface, buried in the layers of soil and time, lay a revelation that would shatter the fragile peace of Bloomberg forever. The truth, once hidden among the whispers of the wind and the murmurs of the earth, was about to be laid bare, casting light into the deepest shadows of the village's soul. The time dawn broke over Bloomberg, the entire village seemed draped in an eerie silence, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sun's feeble rays cast long, skeletal shadows across the scene, struggling to penetrate the gloom that had settled over the town like a shroud. The air was thick with a palpable tension, pulsating with the knowledge that something unspeakable had finally been dragged into the light. As the meticulous work of forensics continued inside the Myotorp farm's white shed, each scrap of evidence was another piece of a grim puzzle slowly coming together. The officers moved with somber efficiency, their movements precise and deliberate, as they cataloged fibers and fingerprints, each one potentially damning. The village had transformed overnight, its bucolic charm now tainted by the horror unearthed on the farm. The streets, once vibrant with cheerful exchanges and everyday life, were now lined with grim-faced residents, their eyes haunted by the specter of the tragedy that had unfolded in their midst. Conversations were hushed, each word weighted with disbelief and sorrow, as the villagers grappled with the knowledge that a predator had been living among them. The volunteers, who had poured their heart and soul into the search for Lisa, now faced the harsh reality of their discovery. Tears mingled with rain as the skies opened, as if nature itself mourned a loss of innocence and the destruction of trust. The camaraderie that had once united the community now felt like a fragile veneer, barely concealing the raw nerves and vulnerability beneath. In the police station, Nereus Bolavicius sat in a sterile interrogation room, the harsh fluorescent lights casting an unforgiving glare. His expression was inscrutable, a mask of calm that only served to heighten the tension in the room. The officers knew they were facing a man who had concealed his darkest impulses beneath a veneer of normalcy, a facade that had crumbled in the wake of Lisa's murder. His past was a tapestry of deceit and violence, woven with threads of control and manipulation. Each piece of evidence they laid before him was a step closer to unraveling the monster hidden inside. The room was silent, save for the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the rustle of paper as the detectives reviewed their notes. The atmosphere was dense with anticipation, the air crackling with the weight of unspoken accusations and the promise of justice. Nereus remained impassive, his eyes betraying nothing, yet the officers could feel the undercurrent of tension that rippled beneath his facade. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming a steady rhythm on the rooftops, echoing the relentless pursuit of truth that had gripped the village. The world seemed to shrink to this moment, this confrontation, where the lines between hunter and hunted blurred, where justice seemed both elusive and inevitable. The investigators knew they had stumbled upon a darkness that ran deeper than anyone had imagined, a darkness that had cost an innocent life. Yet, amidst the despair, there was a flicker of resolve, a determination to see justice done, to ensure that Lisa's voice would be heard, even if only through the echoes of the evidence they painstakingly gathered. As the hours ticked by, the pieces slowly fell into place, each revelation a step closer to the truth. Yet, in the heart of Bloomberg, amid the shadow of horror and grief, there burned a quiet hope. A hope that, even in the wake of such unspeakable tragedy, the light of justice could still pierce the darkness. And as the village held its collective breath, waiting for the reckoning that would surely come, the rain continued to fall, a cleansing baptism over a town forever changed. As the storm clouds rolled across the dim horizon, the small village of Bloomberg carried the weight of its dark secret like a shroud. The torrential rain that poured relentlessly from the heavens seemed to echo the tears of a community that found itself at the epicenter of a nightmare. The victim, Lisa, had been a beloved daughter, sister, and friend, her life snuffed out in a violent act that defied comprehension. And at the heart of this tragedy stood Nereus, a figure now synonymous with horror. In the stark, sterile confines of the interrogation room, The atmosphere was charged with an electricity that seemed to buzz in the very air. Nereus sat there, defiant beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, the shadows casting ominous patterns across his face. The evidence against him was formidable, a dense tapestry of damning truths woven together with threads of DNA, eyewitness accounts, and the cold arrogance imprinted on every move he made. Yet he clung to his denials, each one ringing hollow against the cacophony of evidence. From a moment detectives uncovered Lisa's lifeless form. They had approached the case with a methodical precision, piecing together a puzzle that painted a ghastly picture. The journey took them to the milk room on the farm, a place once mundane, now transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror. The air was thick with a musty scent of decay and abandonment, the walls cloaked in dust that swirled and danced with each step, save for one peculiar anomaly. A singular pipe remained suspiciously clean, devoid of the layers of grime that coated everything else. It was this detail, subtle yet glaring in its peculiarity, that beckoned investigators like a whisper from the shadows. The presence of the rope, its fibers matching those found around Lisa's neck, told a story of violence and despair. The emotions that coursed through the detectives were palpable, a mixture of grief for Lisa and a steely resolve to bring her killer to justice. Each revelation was a blow to the gut, a reminder of the darkness humanity was capable of plunging into. But the physical evidence was only part of the grim tableau. The psychological portrait of Nereus was as chilling as the crime itself. His excuses, bizarre and incredulous, were more than mere lies. They were windows into a mind untethered from reality. The notion of him relieving himself in the barn seemed ludicrous, yet was a fact so grotesque it defied belief. It was as if the very walls of the barn had absorbed his malevolence, the stains of his presence a testament to his depravity. Beyond the barn, the discovery of his secret vantage point, a room with a direct line of sight to the cafe, added layers to his sinister narrative. Here, amid the dust and shadows, he had lurked like a specter, watching, waiting, his twisted desires manifesting in the spectral glow of ultraviolet stains. The realization was a gut-wrenching knot of revulsion and horror, an insight into a mind that had crossed too many boundaries. As the trial approached, the village braced itself for the spectacle to come. Inside the courtroom, the air was heavy with a collective anticipation, the tension almost suffocating in its intensity. The eyes of Lisa's family, red-rimmed and haunted, bore into Nereus with a force that could have toppled mountains. Yet he remained inscrutable, his face a mask of indifference, as if the enormity of his actions had never pierced his consciousness. For the people of Bloomberg, the trial was more than a quest for justice. It was a struggle to reclaim their sense of safety, their belief in the fundamental goodness of humanity. But as the deluge continued to sweep the streets clean, there was a stirring of hope, a hope that even in the bleakest of nights, the dawn would eventually break, bathing all in the warm embrace of justice, no matter how long it took to arrive. The arrest of Nereus came as a chilling relief, a bitter balm for the devastated community of Bloomberg. As the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists, it wasn't just iron binding a man. It was the collective will of a town desperate to find justice for Lisa. A spectral silence wrapped around the streets as word spread, an eerie calm that came with the knowledge that the monster who had walked among them was finally caged. The pursuit of justice began long before Nereus's arrest, the corridors of the legal system echoing with the determination of those who sought to avenge Lisa. The detectives, weary-eyed but resolute, pieced together the evidence with a diligence that bordered on obsession. They moved through the investigation with the meticulous care of those handling fragile glass, knowing well that a single misstep could shatter the case. Each piece of evidence was a thread in a tightly woven tapestry, a tapestry that narrated the horrifying last moments of Lisa's life. As the trial date loomed, Lisa's family found themselves thrust into a whirlwind of media attention and public scrutiny. In the courtroom, the air was electric with tension, a heady mix of anticipation and dread that clung to every spectator like a second skin. The scent of polished wood and the faint musk of old leather-bound law books mingled with the sterile aroma of justice, a sharp contrast to the dark narrative unfolding within its walls. Nereus sat in the dock, his expression as unreadable as a stone gargoyle perched atop a forgotten cathedral. His demeanor was a provocation, a silent mockery of the pain that radiated from Lisa's family like waves crashing against an unyielding shore. The prosecution laid out the case with a cold, methodical clarity, unraveling Nereus's web of intentions and actions with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel cutting away diseased flesh. For those watching, it was an ordeal, a harrowing dance between despair and a fervent hope that justice would prevail. The evidence was devastatingly clear, a timeline that painted Nereus as a predator who had lurked in the shadows, his gaze fixed on an unsuspecting Lisa. Witnesses recounted seeing him near the cafe, an unremarkable figure until his sinister purpose was revealed. The pathologist's testimony was a somber symphony of scientific fact and the quiet horror of what Lisa endured. The defense's arguments, fragile and threadbare, were a desperate attempt to cast shadows on the blinding light of truth. Their claims of framing, their insinuations about Nereus's family, each was a straw grasped at by those who knew the strength of the tide against them. The jury, somber and intent, listened with the gravity of those who knew their decision held the weight of a community's healing process. On the 17th of November, the verdict was delivered with a solemnity that resonated through the courtroom like a deep bell tolling a momentous hour. Nereus was found guilty, and the sentence of life imprisonment was pronounced like a benediction, a promise that Lisa's death would not go unanswered. Outside the courthouse, the wind carried the sounds of a town in mourning and relief, a profound exhalation of breath held too long. The sky, a slate gray, seemed to weep with the townspeople, raindrops mingling with tears of grief and justice. Lisa's parents, supported by loved ones and strangers alike, stood as pillars of strength in a world that had been irrevocably altered. Though justice had been served, the reality of loss remained, a chasm that no legal victory could fill. In the quiet of Bloomberg, where Lisa's absence was felt in the spaces she once filled, the community began its slow, painful journey of healing. In their hearts, however, the assurance remained. Though darkness had descended upon their lives, the light of justice had pierced through, a beacon guiding them back to a semblance of peace. In the end, justice, like an inevitable tide, swept through the corridors of fate, extinguishing the shadow of Nereus's depravity. The chilling whispers of his deeds were silenced by the solemn echo of a cell door closing, a sound as final as the extinguished breath of innocence lost.